You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hello, and welcome to Global Trade This Week. I'm Pete Mento. With me is my friend and co-host Doug Draper. Doug, I'm at Embassy Suites in Indianapolis. Where does today find you?
I am actually in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and it's unfortunate, Pete, it is not a whiteout behind me. Today is a bluebird day, as they call it in Colorado. It snowed over the weekend, and everything is white, crystal blue skies. And behind me, I'm at my house. There is an aspen grove behind me that is flocked with snow against a dark blue sky background. And you can't see it because of the way the lighting's set up and this technology that we're using. It's trying to fade you out. So anyway, it's not a whiteout. It's a beautiful day in Colorado, and here I am.
I got to tell you though, Doug, you look fabulous against that white backdrop. So, there's some nice externalities that come from this.
Yeah, big gigantic white screen. I can't even. I was kind of I had to run home to do some stuff, and I'm like, I'll just do the show here with that amazing background, and it turns out to be white. But you know what? Keenan pushes the button and pulls the levers. He knows what's best for the show and our viewers, so I'll let it slide.
Yeah, and speaking of which, we have a special guest coming on for one of our topics today, which is nice. He is special, all right, but we're looking forward to having him on a little bit. Well, the intro's out of the way, Doug, so why don't you go ahead with your first topic, my friend?
All right. Well, every once in a while, we try to get some railroad discussion going on, and there's a couple things that popped up over the weekend that said, all right, I guess it's time to bring some railroad discussion back on. Part of it is related to, shocker, a potential strike, and part of it is fourth quarter results from the Class 1 railroads, all of which are kind of similar. So I'll just start with the Canadian National Railway. They're bracing for a strike, right? It could potentially go tomorrow. Again, we're not supposed to timestamp any of these conversations, Pete, so people don't know whenever we actually tape the show. But the 28th is when it's supposed to go down. It's 750 signal and communication workers. The Canadian National Railway says they got it covered. Don't worry about it. I'm sure that's the case. 750 is a lot of people, but it's not that much. So I don't think that there'll be any really big impacts, especially with us down here in the U.S. But it's noteworthy because of the interconnectivity that the railroad system started to develop with the railroad system into Canada, the acquisition of Kansas City Southern, and then down into Mexico. So I thought it was interesting because maybe that's going to be something bigger. Maybe the labor issues and challenges will kind of bleed down, but it may just blip and go away, or it may just be another example of how the year of the labor, which was 2023, I think is what you and I spoke about, Pete. I wonder if that's continuing to happen up in Canada. So little piece of note there. The other piece is the earnings reports. Now, Norfolk Southern doesn't have their earnings report till end of this month, end of this week, really, the 29th. But here's the gist of all of the Class 1 railroads, CSX, Union Pacific, BNSF, and Norfolk Southern, is that profits are down because the coal movement is lower, but total revenues are stable or slightly up because of intermodal moves, especially with Union Pacific, right? They're focused in the Southwest, out of California, into that nature. And you and I spoke about how LA ports, the port strike pending on the East Coast, everybody was rerouting back to LA. 2024 was the year of LA, baby, it's back. And the railroads saw a significant bump related to intermodal and, general merchandise movement. So the Norfolk Southern expected to kind of be similar from what I was reading this morning. And Union Pacific had a really bump with their intermodal volume, right? Like 25%. So basically, what they're forecasting, they meaning the pundits, essentially, is that intermodal growth will continue, and that general revenue for the industry is going to be pretty plateaued. Now, I'm sure if there's some railroad guys listening, they'll rip me apart on my basic assessment of it. But there's not enough money in intermodal to offset a unit train of coal. But we'll see what happens with drill, baby, drill. And our energy practices domestically in 2025. But anyway, those things caught my attention. I thought we should bring it on to the show because we haven't talked about the railroad in a while. But I don't know if you heard any of these earning reports, have any comments on that, or how the drill baby drill may impact the railroad industry here this year.
I got a couple of comments here. So we don't normally go too long without talking positively about the environmental impact, in particular, of railroads, and how we're fans. We're fans of intermodal. We're fans of railroads. But this is another great indication of how it just can't seem to get out of their own way, whether it's labor issues or regulatory issues. Just when they start to get momentum, something tends to jump in its path. Strikes, that's a big one, right? So I hear all of this and I think to myself, if they were making more money, if they were doing even better, they can invest even more in infrastructure, which is something that we really need here. It's just disheartening, Doug, that they can't seem to maintain that momentum for a long period of time. And in my heart of hearts, I really hope that changes soon.
Yeah, good one. All right, you got a couple good ones here, Pete. So I'll let you dealer's choice on your first topic.
Yeah, so we'll bring Keenan in here. He's our special guest, Keenan Broth, who's our producer and our engineer, and basically everything other than Doug and I talking like idiots. So Keenan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Great to be here.
I will say that Keenan is a fan favorite. Whenever I speak to people on the road and they bring up the show, they always say we love it when Keenan's on. I'm like, he's only on when Doug and I aren't. So maybe we should keep that. You should keep that to yourself, frankly. Prior to the show, I'd sent out my topics, and Keenan and I and Doug were chatting about one of them beforehand, and it's pretty clear that this is a topic that Keenan knows a great deal about. And today, the financial world, the technology world, was a bit shook on news that China has a very well, what's the word I'm looking for? Well operating, I suppose, AI system, and it's called DeepSeek. Keenan's been following this story for quite some time. And how about you give us a little bit of background on what we're talking about here, Keenan?
Yeah, absolutely. So DeepSeek is a Chinese AI startup. This isn't new. There's been other AI startups. China's up there and doing AI research. America maybe does more of the groundbreaking work, new models, new math. But as far as implementation, China's pretty sophisticated and is right there up there with us. DeepSeek is now making news for having very comparable or superior models to the ones we know about. Everyone knows ChatGPT and OpenAI, or DALL-E for images. Even just this morning, DeepSeek came out with a new model, Janus Pro 7B. The 7 billion stands for the parameters it's trained on and the size it's running, and when you're doing the things, it's intermodal, so you could do text and images. And this is beating out OpenAI and these like big name brands, and they're offering it as an API service way cheaper. And so that's kind of what's upsetting people, right? There's all this capital out there in the markets that's looking for an edge, try to find some alpha, try to find some investment. How can I grow my retirement? How can I grow my speculative venture capital, private equity, and all this capital that's now been newly deployed into AI infrastructure, NVIDIA, right? What is their price to earnings ratio? I don't keep up to this on a day-to-day basis anymore, but it's up there, right? There's a lot of capital looking to get in on the growth using the tools, and we probably will see more chips and we will see more power used, but maybe some of the analysts or just the strategy behind deploying all this capital hasn't taken into consideration, what if it gets more efficient? What if China, some people are alleging, steals some other models or training other people have done and are able to then undercut the market and have high-end performance images, text, whatever, deploy this into businesses for an order of magnitude less, and then half again, where it's just not competitive. So it's driving the arms race further and further. And then you also have other people asking about like data safety and those sorts of things. But so far I haven't personally signed up for DeepSeek and haven't signed their terms of agreements or anything like that. I haven't read it all myself. But people saying that they're using it say that it apparently isn't super censored. It's trained on Western English content. So you could ask it about certain events in history, let's say 1989 or things like that, that aren't as clumsily, ham-fistedly blocked on other applications. So it is competitive. but there's a lot of capital at play. So I think it's people kind of overreact in some ways. Buy the rumor, sell the news type of situation. So I wouldn't drastically change your portfolio. But if you are super heavily invested in NVIDIA and nothing else, maybe rebalance. This is not financial advice. Talk to your fully licensed and insured personal financial planner.
Yeah, note to Robinhood participants, right? How many people just have taken a chunk of money and put it in there? So
there are two pieces of this, Keenan, that really get my attention. The first is the allegation that the technology behind it may have been hornswoggled, or they might have found a way to circumvent what's going on here by using existing models, whether it was done, a completely legal way or not. And that's terrifying to think that such an important piece of technology could be co-opted. And then second, how are they getting the hardware to run this when practically every single important piece of advanced hardware and technology is deeply controlled by the West? They're still managing to get a hold of it. So that's a big export compliance issue with me, which is why I brought it up. How are they managing to do all of this if theoretically they don't have access to the technology to do so?
What I can say on that right now, there may be exports in place or controls put in place, and that could change things over time. And eventually maybe they make their own chips. As of right now, what's pretty cool about DeepSeek and why it's making so much waves is that it's being able to be run on people's cell phones. Like you could be on a small computer off the internet and have it running locally, compared to the bigger models, more parameters, or just older models needed like a powerful computer capable of doing video rendering, where now it's cheaper. So you won't stop them by controlling those exports, at least right away with that. What's also interesting, and I'm not super up to date on the latest antitrust or Meta lawsuit with Facebook. Apparently, there's allegings now going on that Meta and Llama, the model that they've created, similarly used torrented information. Similar to OpenAI, I think had to do some pay to do business with the New York Times, right? Like, we never told you could like scrape our historical websites and all that stuff. These models are more useful when they contain everything you could possibly train them on. But then if they're in an arms race, even before China gets involved, and you have Facebook employees torrenting large amounts of like breaking intellectual property to get this huge library from LibGen is what
Allegedly.
is in there. Yeah, allegedly, right. We don't know, but that's what this lawsuit's alleging. And so if they do that, and then if China steals their model, like Llama, and then does it even cheaper and makes it a little more efficient, it's kind of an arms race. It's a wild time to see it. Interesting times.
Yeah, the one thing that just struck me is, the world is all about money. Who's making your money? And you made a point before the show, like all of this investment that's going in to say, this is the way you do large language models. You got to invest a ton of money. You got to get the tech bros involved. You got to, infrastructure. Let's talk about nuclear power, because it's going to absorb so much energy and power. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, DeepSeek pops up, and they're like, "Wait, what? What? It's equal or better?" And it's didn't have this didn't have all this this capital being poured into it. That's going to draw a lot of introspection to what's going on here in the U.S. with our large language model approach, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's about protecting technology first and foremost, and finding a way to make it harder for people to not only get to the software, get to the data, get to the inputs, but also find a way to control the physical technology, which is really top of mind right now at the Department of State. So this is a fascinating story. We will be watching it. We'll continue to report on it. And as we learn more, you'll be hearing more about it on Global Trade this week. So, Keenan, thank you for your insights. Get back in your booth.
Thanks for having me. One final piece of intrigue on this, as the story is kind of breaking in the Western world. It seems that there is now a counterattack where someone, we don't know if it's Mark Zuckerberg himself or who is doing it, is doing a large like malicious attack on DeepSeek. I'm imagining like a distributed denial of service where people are just like signing up and or like making bad API calls, war dialing, just to take them offline so people can't use them or integrate them or wouldn't want to. So there's active warfare going on. currently in the AI space. But I will let you guys jump on to your next topic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Keenan, good feedback, buddy. Thank you.
Never start a war with nerds ever. we know the infrastructure, we know the
Great
rules, and
advice.
we're really good at paperwork, so don't ever start.
Yeah, don't try us.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, that brings us to halftime, Pete. And I keep seeing my screen. I go to dark, like now I'm good, and then all of a sudden it
You get a
goes to
little
dark.
bit. Yeah, you get a little bit of every once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's. I'm trying to sit as still as I possibly can so that doesn't happen and distract from the conversation. And this time of the show, the conversation is all about halftime, things that you and I want to talk about, whatever we want. And I didn't really have a strong halftime, so we're just going to do one of them, which is your topic. And I know you got a passion about it, so I'll let you jump in and put your get off my yard hat on.
Yeah. Spoiler alert: I'm not going to care about the Super Bowl this year. I'm not going to care. I'm not going to watch it. I don't even really care who wins or loses. I'm so sick of Patrick Mahomes. This is what it must have been like for the rest of the world with Tom Brady, right? I've had it. And the Eagles and their fans are just unlikable. So the idea of me having to sit through an entire evening of watching two teams that I am in no way interested. Let's see, here's the problem, right? If Patrick Mahomes wins, I'm going to be annoyed. But if he loses, I'm going to be annoyed at who beat them. So I'm thinking, Doug, I'm going to binge watch reruns of Downton Abbey. I'm going to drink a nice Chardonnay and have cucumber sandwiches with the crust removed, because that's about as far away from Super Bowl Sunday as I can possibly imagine. So I'm taking it in the absolute opposite direction. I know you're a Kansas City guy. I know you're probably real excited for a hopeful three-peat here. But after watching those last couple of games, the way that it was officiated, and I just had it. How wonderful would it have been to have a rookie in the Super Bowl and Josh Allen finally in the Super Bowl? That would have been definitely watchable. But instead, I've got this trash. So I'm out, Doug. I'm out. I'm 100% out of the Super Bowl this year. I will not be watching it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not as strongly opinionated on the topic as you are. And the thing about I have a love-hate relationship with the Chiefs, right? So I grew up in Kansas. I follow them. Everybody in Kansas City and Lawrence, where my kids went to school, are Chief fanatics, right? And being out here in Denver, I always, with my college buddies, everybody's got their college friends where they have a group chat or whatever. And I'll just like strike a match and throw it in the pin and just let the serpents go crazy. So I'll be the antithesis on that one. But I don't know. I mean, I like as much as the pomp and circumstance around it, right? The leading up to it. The game's fine. I think it'll be a good game. Those are good teams. But what you just said about a rookie and Josh Allen, that would have been the feel-good story of the year for sure. But I'll watch the game. It'll be fun. It'll be entertaining for sure. And you can enjoy Downton Abbey. Can you name one character name on Downton Abbey?
Crowleys? Oh, I love Downton Abbey.
Okay.
Yeah, I can absolutely do it. Doug, I'm a Saints fan, which means I am built for misery. I am built for disappointment. All right. And then the other team that I followed as a kid is the Browns. I love the Browns. Equally disappointing football team. But I just can't imagine having to care about either one of these teams, and I'm not gonna. Anything would have been better. I would have loved to have watched young Jaden Daniels, LSU product, go out there and do it, and then Josh Allen finally get a shot. That would have been great too. But no, not gonna work that way.
Well, another year. So, all right, that's halftime. Brought to us by Cap Logistics. Obviously, Keenan and his team, who was just on, put this sucker on, and we appreciate his support every single week to make it happen. So, I'm going to run into my quick topic, Pete. I got kind of a tight line here on our show, so I'm just going to jump into it. Mine's kind of quiet, if you will, and it's kind of related to the 4 seasons of air freight, right? If you're in the industry, you kind of know you got the quiet season, and then you got produce season, and then goes into peak season, and then holiday season, right? So the quiet season is where we are now. It's the first 3 months of the year, and to me, Pete, the quiet season is exceptionally quiet, right? There's always some trends with spot rates going up on ocean freight, and there's always some clamor about, is there enough warehouse space for inventory, and oh my gosh, my PO is going to be late because I didn't get my product out before the factories were closed and Chinese New Year went into place. But it just seems like from what I've read, and I made an effort this morning, Pete, to kind of say, what's the deal? It just seems really, really quiet. for this year. And I think a lot of it is just there's, as crazy as it sounds, there is stability coming across with um, the war, the Israeli-Palestine war. That's going to calm down the Red Sea situation. The port strike has been averted, so there's some crises that have been averted. I think the Fed's not going to do much with the interest rate, so that's a calming factor. It just seems like the calm period, right, or slack season, as some refer to it, is just going to be pretty mellow, right? There's no drama out there that's going to create these spikes and go nuts. So that's kind of the vibe I'm feeling from the warehouse perspective, from the spot market on the ocean freight. And so I wanted to call that out. I think it's going to be a really slow first quarter in the ocean inbound world.
Maybe, and maybe that's the reason why, Doug. It could also be that people were front loading their supply chains.
Oh, that's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, there was chaos beforehand with, oh my God, what happens with after November 5th and the election or whatever day it was.
Yeah.
Everybody was kind of in a panic. I saw that, right? So maybe some of that happened in advance of the normal Chinese New Year thing. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're exactly right.
Nope.
There was a little bit of chaos there right after the election.
Cut me off all you want. It's our show, buddy. Keenan, however, that's enough of that for a little while. There could be some front loading there. And, there's a lot of chaos, but I think there's a lot of anticipation right now and anxiety. People don't know what the hell's going to go on. Mm-hmm. So orders could be down. We'll find out. I mean, TPM's in a couple of weeks. I will be speaking there. I think we're going to get a lot of insight out of TPM. That's always what happens, right? A lot of the big breaking news and assumptions and things come out of TPM. So I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say there. I'm sure I'll be reporting on it when we get back. But you're right. It does feel eerily quiet right now. And that's not a good feeling for people in our industry because it's usually waiting for a foot to drop, and that foot is never pleasant.
Agreed. All right. Good deal. All right. Bring us home on your last topic, Pete.
Yeah, buddy. Last topic. So yesterday, I'm having a lovely afternoon watching football. I've got a nice cold Fresca next to me, and my phone starts blowing up from everyone, from people inside the government, folks in media. Oh my gosh, what's going on with Colombia? And the long and short of it is the president has an executive order which is sending back a great number of people to a number of South and Central American countries and Mexico that were here and deemed to be illegal. So the president is sending these folks back, and the president of Colombia said, "No, I won't accept your flights." And you can only imagine what that did at the White House. So immediately the response was, "Fine. Don't want the flights to come in? Here's a 25% tariff. And if you don't capitulate to our desires, it goes to 50% the week after. We're going to be hyper inspecting all of your cargo. We're going to be hyper inspecting all of your people. And we're going to deny a number of visas." I mean, it was like taking a baseball bat to the knees of trade with Colombia, who is a very, very important trading partner of the U.S. We have an excellent relationship with that country with regards to trade. And talk about bad timing. A lot of the fresh cut flowers that we have in this country come from Colombia. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. And Colombian coffee is still a massive export to the United States. They finally worked out the terms this morning, but it was the shortest trade war maybe in history. I think it lasted
I was thinking the same thing.
Like 80 minutes. And I think that this is a good indication of how the president intends to use the Emergency Economic Powers Act. If he doesn't like a situation in the way that it's going, he could evoke tariffs like that, and he has the right to determine what they are. There is no limit under the EPA. Yeah. So that would allow him to go as high as he feels like. And I think that for the next few years, at least people in my position, they're going to be managing that left and right. So whenever this happens, I would not at all be surprised if we see these threats happen again. We already have countries like Nicaragua, Venezuela, Honduras, in similar situations saying, we don't want our people treated this way. We want them coming in on commercial airlines. These folks are migrants that have left our country. We want them brought back with dignity. So I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon, Doug. And I think that these sorts of shock and awe tactics with regards to tariffs are something we're just going to have to get used to. So what I'm going to say to everyone is take a breath when they happen. Take a deep breath. Don't lose it. Give it some time to maturate. And odds are at the end of it, you're probably not going to be facing these tariffs to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same thing. I don't have anybody at the State Department texting me, right? But just my bookie, and he was more focused on the game. But anyway, you're right. Like the shortest tariff war ever, like it happened in the half of the football game, right? I mean, it was crazy, and the fact that Colombia didn't back down, and when you say you didn't back down, then that in itself defines a conflict, right? So this tactic is going to be used again and again and again, and
Mhm.
it's just going to be like, okay, just I love your comment, Pete. Love it. Calm down. Don't freak out,
Yeah.
and let's see what transpires. But the fact that this tactic worked, and the government or Trump got what he wanted, it will be used again and again and again. Just it's raising your kids 101, right? You give your kid a little slack, and he gets away with something, he's going to do it again, right? So anyway, it'll be interesting. Getting a little too political on this whole deal here, but
Yeah.
it's not the first time it's going to happen, and we will see it again, and we'll see at what point does a country say, "I call your bluff," and then something transpires.
That's why I'm counseling patients with everyone. Just don't no knee jerk reactions based on the shock policy. I put something up on LinkedIn, Doug, to talk about how fast this was, right? So I put a very quick comment saying these are the tariffs. They'll go up to 50% if the demands of the White House are not met. I'll be putting up more as I hear. And then, of course, it ends. I'm like, I'm just going to delete the first tweet. There's like no point in it. I just got rid of it. It was that good. It's like, why even bother keeping it up? It's already
Yeah.
over. So this will be something that I think we're going to be talking a lot about, Doug, is just the threat of tariffs and the size of our economy being something that will generally get us what we want in the end. But there are countries like Mexico, as an example, like Canada, as an example, and China. They're just not going to play that soft on it. So we'll be watching it pretty closely.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. A good way to end the show, Pete. I'm glad it was fun. I mean, literally, Keenan, we invited him to come on probably 30 seconds before the show started. So that was great.
Well,
And he
we didn't
certainly
invite him, Doug. I think you did.
I invited him. I said, come on. You know more about this topic than I do. So it's good to have him pop in. And again, I apologize. I'm trying to like stay still or whatever with my lighting here. But the show's over, so it doesn't matter, Pete. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It's always fun to see you, Pete. Regardless of where you are, it's fun to talk to our audience about our takes on global trade. They're always forward thinking. We don't necessarily talk about what transpired in the past. That's what makes the show fun and engaging. And please make comments about our topics in the notes. So that's it, Pete. Travel safe. You got a busy schedule coming up, and we'll see everybody next week.
Take care, Doug. Thanks, everybody.
All righty. Take care.